Hi, welcome to Lights Camera Author. I'm your host, Jim Juno, and my guest tonight, if you have followed country music for the past 50 years, you will know, or even more, you'll know the name George Jones. He was a legendary country singer, and I have with me tonight his wife, or now widow. My condolences for your loss, Nancy. Nancy Jones. She has a book out. It's called Playin Possum, My Memories with George. Nancy, welcome to Lights Camera Author.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Where are you coming from to us tonight from?
Do what, hon?
Where are you coming to us tonight from?
I'm in Franklin, Tennessee.
Franklin, okay. That is, see, I'm from originally Louisville, Kentucky. And so I'll forgive you for being from Tennessee. Okay.
Oh, now come on, behave yourself.
Hey, we're neighbors. We are neighbors, so but your book, Playin Possum, of course, that was George Jones' nickname, the possum. And it tells about how, not just how you met, but what his life was like before you met. So let me start with how you ended up meeting
Oh
George
gosh, there
Jones.
was a friend of mine that lived well, I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana, and she begged and pleaded with me to go fly to New York to meet George and go to a show because she was dating one of his managers. And I'm like, oh my God, I am not into country music. I was into Creedence Clearwater at that time, honey. I love Creedence Clearwater. So she kept on and kept on and kept on. And I said, okay, I'll go. But that's it. I'll go and then shut up and let me go and get it over with. And I did. And I will tell you one thing, what a nice man he was. I had so much fun. We got there on a Friday and we left on a Sunday. And I've never had so much fun. And I never realized what a great voice he had. I mean, I wasn't into that kind of music, but once he was on that stage, and I was like, wow, how is he doing that? Because he wasn't hardly opening his mouth, but those words were coming out, and he was phrasing things that I'd never seen anybody do in my whole life.
And amazing, and his voice was so smooth and I want to say silky. It was just a great sound, a unique sound when he sat up on the stage and performed. Um, Did you have a favorite song of his after you met him, of course?
It's our favorite song together was "Walk Through This World with Me."
Okay, that's great. I think I think mine was He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Oh,
And
this is Ken. I don't know if you Ken.
Hey, Jen.
hey,
That's Jim, and this is Ken.
Good to be with you.
hey Ken, how you doing?
I'm sorry I'm late. Actually, I thought we were on at 7.
That's okay. I think Jim was ready.
Hey, you got to be ready. If you're going to be talking to Nancy, you got to be ready way in advance.
I got all my little note cards here with me, so it's okay.
You doing all right?
I'm doing great.
Good. You look
Doing good. Thank you.
We were just talking about how she met George Jones.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah, and but the book actually starts with you. I mean, you during the 2021, August of 2021, you developed COVID, and well, I'm going to let you tell the story because it's really a harrowing story about how sick you were.
Well, when I got COVID, I was so sick, and I also, with that, I lost all my hair. I had to learn how to walk again. I lost 70% of my right lung. That a fungus was eating it up, and it was horrible, horrible. And I know God saved me for a reason. And laying in that hospital bed and wondering, okay, what is he saving me for? And I think it was to write this book and try to get people closer to God. Because and when you're that sick and you're laying there and you don't have anything to do but think, well, that's when it's time to get your life together and try to bring more people to Jesus. And that's what I want to do with this book. And that's what I want to do the rest of my life, is just bring people to Jesus.
Was it hard writing this book? I mean, bringing back all those
Ask Ken.
memories. Ask.
We laughed a lot, but we also cried sometimes too. There were some tears there as well too. Yeah.
uh,
Nancy told the honest story. She didn't hold anything back. And when you go back through some of those difficult times, that's like ripping your heart all over again. Taking
exactly.
a knife over a wound.
And I mean, you were honest. I mean, life with George Jones was no bed of roses at times either.
Well,
Um,
life with George was not easy, because there were so many demons that had took over George before I ever came around, I guess. But I had to fight those demons, and when I thought that I was through fighting them, there were some more. So that's what God, I think, put me here for, is to fight those demons and get them out of George, and let him live a nice, comfortable life and get himself together so he could go to heaven. And that's exactly what I believe, and will not ever change my mind, that that man is in heaven.
when you met him, you mentioned his demons. I don't want to dwell on this, but I do want to let people know, because for the younger people out there, they may not know who George Jones is or was. Um, he had, I want to say, over 50 I know he had, was it over 50 gold records? Am I?
I have to go back and look.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Oh,
my,
wait.
He had a bunch, that's for
I
sure.
was
he
saying, like,
had
in
a
the
bunch.
ballpark. I'm in the ballpark there, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yep.
and when you met him, of course, I mean, there was alcohol and cocaine, were the two biggies,
True.
and he could not perform, or he didn't feel he could perform sober, did he?
No, no, he thought he had to have a drink to perform. And whenever he did, well, George was so bad, I have to put this part in there. He was so bad on drugs and alcohol that people were like, "Oh God, here comes George." He invented his own friends, the old man and the duck, which you will read in that book. And he invented his own friends that were not real. So he felt like he had somebody to talk to, which when I got there, I'm like, when he started that, I'm like, oh Lord, this man's too far gone. What am I going to do now, God? But in the book, you will read how I got rid of the old man and the duck. And it's really weird how I did it, but God helped me do that. But I feel like that I accomplished a lot by getting rid of some of those demons, and there were nothing but demons. So yes, it was hard to get him off of drugs and get him away from cocaine. But
Mhm.
I did it, and with the help of the good Lord. I couldn't do that by myself. There was no way. I didn't even know what cocaine looked like. I didn't even know what marijuana was. I was just a little old girl from Shreveport, Louisiana, and never seen any of this stuff, but it didn't take me long to learn.
Well, in his early life was no easy task either. You mentioned that, how he was, father, I think, was abusive when he was growing up, and so that must have played a part in shaping him.
And he
And
drank a lot too. His
Oh
dad
gosh,
drank
yes.
a lot. And then when he would come home, he would want George to sing, George and his sister to sing. It's a wonder that George ever touched a drop of alcohol after he saw all that with his dad. But on the other hand, I guess there's a propensity toward that sometimes when we grow up with that. And that was something that drew him to alcohol as well.
that's amazing. Yeah. You mentioned in the book that George Jones was one of those people who could be happy. He could be happy and sad, successful. I'm sorry, successful and sad, full of sadness at the same time, simultaneously.
Yeah.
Um, what was that? I mean, was there any telltale signs that you knew what was going to be happening?
Yeah, we had some happy times. I mean, there were, as long as I could keep him sober and keep him busy. Now he had to be busy. He had to either be on a farm somewhere doing something, mowing the grass, riding a tractor, doing something. but he had to stay busy. So, but the first time that George ever went on the stage sober was the scariest thing ever. I've never seen anyone so scared in my life. And as many times as he's walked on that stage to perform, but he always performed with a glass of whiskey. But when he walked out there and realized, he looked back at me and I'm like, you can do it, you can do it. And he did. He did the whole show without a drop of whiskey, without nothing but water. And he was so proud of himself when he came off that stage. He was just a very scared, nervous person. He just thought no one really cared about his singing.
Yeah, that's amazing that somebody that successful can be that insecure.
He was.
Yeah.
Yes, he
Right.
was.
What
Yeah.
Nancy said there, Jim, about keeping him busy, that's why Jones Country was so important whenever they started building the theme park over there, where he was out there and working with his hands. They're planting well, Nancy was planting flowers. George didn't plant too many, but they were out there working together. And for a while, he stayed relatively sober, right?
He was cutting down trees. He was very, very smart on how to build something. I mean, he could imagine something. I can't. Show it to me and then we'll go build it then. But he could do it in his mind. He was just a smart person.
Sounds like he could have been an architect if he hadn't gone into country singing, country music.
He might have. He might have.
Well, he was the one that first told me years ago when he was drinking, and I was like, "Oh God, he's too far gone." He's the first one that came up with payola.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep, and I was like, they're not doing that. There's no way they're doing that. And then you remember Murder on Music Row.
Yep.
And when I started listening to that and read the book on that, and I knew those two guys, well, then it was like, you know what? He's a pretty smart cookie. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and I would be remiss though if I did not ask you about the most famous event that happened. Um, what I'm going to you know what I'm going to ask about is the lawnmower incident.
Oh, that story's been told so many times.
So many times, but you know the real story though.
The real story was in Vidor, Texas, and his brother-in-law is the one that hid the keys, and he did everything, locked him in his room, because that was with Shirley, the boy's mother, the second one wife. And when he looked out that window, he said, I thought to myself, he said, I want to drink so bad I can't stand it. I'm dying up here. So he was upstairs. He looked out that window and there was that lawnmower there, and he thought, you know what? I know they've took the keys. I know they have. He climbed out of that window all the way down and got on that lawnmower. So yes, it did happen, and it was in Vidor, Texas.
Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the story about what you just said, what happened is that he was wanting a drink. He wanted to go to the liquor store, and his family at the time hid all the keys, so he couldn't drive. So what he did is that he got his riding lawnmower, and was top speed of 5 miles an hour, and and tried to drive to the store, which was like about 8 miles away. And but what you mentioned in the book though is that he wasn't trying to get to the liquor store on his riding mower. He was trying to hitch a ride. He was trying to get
Pretty
into a real
much,
car.
And what was so funny, he said, these people passing me up, I knew every one of them. Not a one would stop and pick me up.
That lawnmower story has taken a number of different variations.
Oh, yes, it
Oh
has.
my gosh! I
Shown
mean,
up in a
it's
bunch of country music videos, and it's still out. We put a great picture of George on a lawnmower in Nancy's book. It's a collector's item right there.
well, even Tammy Wynette had her own version of it.
She
I mean,
did.
Oh, yeah, but I got tickled. I used to get tickled at George. He'd say, Lord, it did not happen in Florida. It didn't happen Alabama. It happened in Vidor, Texas. Now I'm gonna tell you one thing was honest. If George did it, he would tell you. He would tell the truth, even how bad it made him look. When I used to tell him when he would miss a show, I'd say, George, don't go on there and tell him you were drunk. Just say you were sick. He said, now, honey, I said, I mean it. Just stop it. So, I mean, I've been working hard to pay off these lawsuits. Well, guess what? He goes on there and he buries me. He said, well, y'all, my wife wants me to tell y'all that I was sick. He said, but I wasn't. I was drunk, and I want to make it up to all of y'all. Well, I was trying to find a place to hide.
From the lawyers.
Oh, God, yes.
Oh my God. And you mentioned you mentioned that it was in it was in several music videos. The first thing he even put it in his own honky tonk song music video. I mean, it's the whole premise of the music video. And
Vince Gill has it. John
Vince
Rich.
Gill, Hank Williams Jr., All My Rowdy Friends had
Yeah,
a
that's right. Yeah.
That's
had a
right, with Junior, yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, he embraced the story, which is really kind of cool. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
so many people nowadays would go, "Well, no, no, that didn't happen." No, you know.
Not George.
Like with No Show Jones, you know, him and Merle Haggard wrote that song. And he used to make fun of that. But what was even funnier and got a big applause on stage, he'd say something about, Ron would say, well, George, Tammy Wynette divorced you. And he'd say, yeah, she divorced me for some reason. And the crowd would go crazy. I mean, he just joked with everything.
That's incredible. I mean, and really, I mean, he looked like he was having fun in life. I mean, yes, I mean, he had his demons, you know, but I mean, okay, he drank. You know, okay, cocaine, yes, that's bad. Nobody should do cocaine. And alcoholism is a serious disease. I'm not going to shortchange them. But George Jones looked like at all times he was having the time of his life.
Well, he thought he was having a time of his life.
And he did after he got clean.
After he got
Yeah.
clean, he did have a time of his life. And he was like, why did I do all of that? And you know what? He said, if I was knew I was going to live this long, I'd have took better care of myself.
He actually played shows for free to make up for the shows that he couldn't
That's
perform when he was under the
that's how I
influence,
got.
you know.
We both got back in with promoters. Is that they would say, no, we're not going to book him. I'm like, hey, I'll have him there. And George would get on the phone. He said, I'll do the show for free. I'll do it for free. They're like, George, we still have to advertise. Advertise it. I'll be there. So that's how we built it back up.
And you know, Jim, whenever Nancy and George first got together, there were about 200 lawsuits against George for not showing up previously. And Nancy took it upon herself to solve every one of those lawsuits. And I think they were all happy that George would come back and do another show for them.
How long did it take him and you, Nancy, to really clear those
Well,
lawsuits?
what we did, we doubled up on it. So if it was like a 3-day that we were going out, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, well, then I would give them whatever day they wanted. If they wanted a Saturday, they got a Saturday. So then we had Friday and Sunday that we got paid, but we didn't get paid for that one date that they picked. So that's how I solved them.
So basically, he performed 3 shows and got paid for 2.
Right. Yep.
How was Waylon Jennings? I remember reading in the book that he didn't he try to get him in rehab?
Yeah, Waylon did. And, you know, George would listen to Waylon and Johnny a lot. Because the Waylon, he'd sit there and preach to him about how you got to stop this. You got a wonderful wife here, George. What's the matter with you? Then Johnny and June, they were my prayers. They would sit there and pray with him and pray with him. And he loved it when people prayed with him because he was raised Pentecostal and his mother was very spiritual. So the way that I would calm him down sometimes is praying. And that's the thing that I'm saying in this book is that, you know, prayers can answer anything. And I don't care how far gone you are or what. Say your prayers and mean them and talk to God.
That's amazing. Now, life after George, how's life been since he passed away? I mean, not to make it sound like that, but I mean, Kevin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ken.
Ken, I'm sorry, Ken.
Ken
Um,
Abraham.
huh? I'm sorry, what was that again?
His name is Ken Abraham.
Ken Abraham. Okay, saves me the embarrassment of asking what his last name was. Okay.
That's all right, Jim. Not a problem.
How did y'all meet?
Actually, Nancy and I met whenever I was writing Randy Travis's book. That's what I do for a living. I write books, mostly collaborations with high profile celebrity newsmakers, that sort of thing. And I was working with Randy Travis. And, Randy loved George Jones. To Randy, George was the ultimate singer. He was the best. And so many people felt that way. And Randy was one of them. So they said, well, if you want some good stories about Randy and George, you need to talk to Nancy. So I came and Nancy and I met, and she did. She had some good stories, and some of the great stories in Randy Travis's book came from Nancy Jones. Because
well, some of them I had to tone them down a little bit.
So whenever she got ready to write this one, she gave me a call and said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yes, I would be interested in that."
How long did it take you two to write this book?
I think it took about 6 months or so, didn't it?
Really?
More?
6 to 8 months,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and because we went back through Nancy, one of the great things working with Nancy is she has a lot of memorabilia about George because they had the George Jones Museum, downtown Nashville. She had a lot of articles, she had a lot of photographs, she has some of George's clothing. She's got a whole museum right here. And so going back through that, it was bittersweet. It was great for me as the writer, but it was hard for Nancy because I was pulling her back through a memory. Every time we pull something out, there was another memory for Nancy to deal with. But she was a trooper. She was willing to go there and to talk about those things. And there are just some great stories in Nancy's book that you don't find anywhere else in country music.
That leads me on to my next question. That you said it was hard at times. What story was the hardest for you to
The
reminisce
hardest
about?
is just with him being so drunk and missing shows, and I working with him so hard on it, but just being so drunk and read up on that, and the media is not a very good, they're not very good people. So when they would print something that would really, some of it true, some of it not, but it hurt to go through all of that stuff. But I have every article of George Jones since the 80s.
Well, I think
Wow.
to turn that around, Jim, just a little bit, rather than the hardest story, one of the best stories came out of one of the most difficult times whenever George hit the bridge in Franklin, Tennessee, where he had the accident where he smashed into the bridge. And everybody thought, oh my, this is going to be the end of George Jones. But God used that to turn George's life around, thanks to Nancy. And she had 13 more great years with George. So, what the devil meant for evil, God turned around and used for good.
He did, and that was the song he was had choices that come out.
Choices, yeah, that's right.
And that's what he was. He loved that song. He loved choices, and that's what he said. I had a lot of choices, and I didn't choose the right ones, but God saved him. And like I said, I had 13 good years with him.
And over in 30 altogether, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
30,
Yes.
30 years. I mean, that's
That's a long time, man.
That's a lifetime. Yes. I mean, that's you know, when he passed away, I believe what 1991 was it? Was that when he passed
When
away?
he passed
Uh-huh.
in 2013.
2013. I'm looking at the wrong listing here.
Yeah.
2013. And by that time, he had completely rehabilitated his reputation, which, I mean, even his hero, Hank Williams Sr., didn't do that. So
Right.
I
That's right.
applaud you, Nancy, for getting him clean, keeping him on the straight and narrow, and I really think you did a great job. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you so much. Well, like I said, it was me and the good Lord.
I tell you
And
what,
that's what's in the book. You will, whenever people read this book, they're going to like, why did she stay with him?
that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Read on and see why God put me here, why God wanted that man in heaven, and he's probably still up there singing and having a blast in heaven because that's where he is.
Oh, he's looking down, wondering why you're wasting your time talking to me. You know.
He's like,
He's probably
no,
singing.
no, he's saying, set them straight, honey, set them straight.
Up there singing with Vestal,
That's right, but that's good.
Was there ever a time that you said, I can't take this?
Close, close.
Yeah, yeah, very close.
Right when he had the accident, right around
Yeah.
that time, where George had gotten drunk the night before, after he was supposed to have stopped drinking, and Nancy was about ready to walk out the door and say, "Forget it." Remember?
Yep.
That's
And he
amazing.
said, he rode around on the farm out there and he said, if you don't leave me, he said, let's let me ride around and think. And, but what he said is after this all happened, he said, I prayed to God to hit me in the head with a sledgehammer. Well, he hit him in the head with a bridge and that straightened him up.
Sure.
Well, I tell you, I really appreciate you and Ken taking time tonight. Nancy Jones and Ken Abraham. And the book is, those are the authors. If you love country music and you love George Jones music, then I recommend you go to Amazon.com, bnn.bn.com, or go into a brick and mortar store. Go into one of your local dealers and have them,
Sure.
if they don't have it, have them order it.
They can order it. That's right.
What's
And
the
it's
web?
also out on audio now.
That's right. It's now out on audiobook and on Kindle too, so you can take it with you.
True,
And
yes.
and can you? Is there a website that people can go to?
We don't have a website. Just go to Amazon.com and you can get it there.
Fantastic, Nancy and Ken. The book is called Playin Possum. My memories of George Jones, and Nancy Jones, Ken Abraham. Thank you for being on Lights Camera Author tonight.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.